how are pharma companies sort of reacting?
More so, I would say initially March was quite impacted on the supply side because the manufacturing plants had to be closed at a very short notice. The supply chains, which were very complex in case of pharma plants, are disrupted, totally disrupted. No one even had time to respond, to plan, to stock up, and all that. And one did not know for how long, for how many weeks, we were going to have the lockdown. So of course, so that had a great impact. So while government realizing that it's important sector, essential, services, so manufacturing was restarted, some supply chain support was given. So plants are getting back to normalcy. Even as we speak today, over the last few days, I have spoken with many manufacturing units. So most, in best case scenarios, they have come back to about 25 to 50% of the capacity utilization. Obviously, they've lost out on the production in the month of March and April. And now we are in a situation where even the demand certainty is not there, especially on the acute side. However, so everything is not gloomy. Some good developments have also taken place, on the movement of goods, on production resuming in China, with which the Indian pharmaceutical supply chain is so linked. Anything happens in China, Indian pharma sector gets impacted. And Indian pharma sector is pretty large. I mean, as much as its domestic market, which is, let's say, about $20 billion, so much there's equal amount of exports which is happening out of India. So the overall impact is very, very significant. So companies, as we speak, Madhur, the companies are now resuming their operations, trying to fix the missing sort of the pieces, get the supply chain running. But I think we still have a long way to go.
Interesting.
And like you said, it merits a discussion. It definitely, one of the things that companies can actually use this as an opportunity to look at their planning aspect, because you need to plan for longer horizons on the supply side, on the demand side. You need to plan with a lot of uncertainty, unpredictability in the system. So I think as we go along in the discussion, we will, of course, get to touch upon some of these points in more detail. Yeah, over to you, Madhav.
Yeah, no, I think this is excellent, and I think you left it on a very interesting note around planning and so on. So let's move to Jasdeep. In Jasdeep, I think while his Cipla experience is sort of whatever it is, but he's seen several pharma companies very deeply, especially smaller size, mid-size, and larger sized companies. Some of his peers and competitors. Jasdeep, what's your sense around how are pharma companies sort of reacting, and specifically the point that Manish left us on around planning, and what does it mean? Like how are they sort of altering their future course?
Well, thanks, Madhur. And again, I also like to thank you for bringing in me and a very esteemed panel. I think I really appreciate that. I must start, Madhur, before answering the question, that we are an essential industry, right? And amongst this whole COVID issue, one of the industries that should be grateful is our industry, right? And not only are we trying to tackle this issue, but we are also trying to, be normal as much as abnormality is happening around us, right? Now, specifically, I concur with most points that Manish has mentioned around the impact on some of the categories of products that we've seen. Now, taking the slice on the large and the mid and the small size, of course, some of the large companies have been able to manage this much better than some of the mid and the small sized companies. Not only is the network of some of the large companies much stronger, but also the dependency of MSME and SME and some of the small-sized companies on the informal labor force is very high, and that makes the issue a double edge for them, because these are the first set of labor movement that happened because of COVID. So I think even if you see the results, you pick up any, whether you pick up AVAX or you pick up IQVIA and you start cutting and slicing, you will see that companies have at small and mid-size have had a higher pressure on maintenance of their business. I think some of the large companies also have been very proactive in understanding the gravity of the situation, and were figured out that they need to manage their supply chain quite quickly. At least that's what the observation we had. To that extent, there was at least a proactive engagement of making sure that we reached out to our suppliers, vendors, quite proactively. So that's something that's helped some of the large companies. And also, very important point that Manish mentioned is that some of the large companies are seeing this as a setup for a new normal that will come, right? Something that you're going to allude in the section 3, a very important point. And you see that maturity of understanding the new normal it doesn't come trivial. It's not trivial, right? You have to be mature. You have to be a certain size to know that this force is impacting the business model of how the pharma is going to operate. So it's very interesting that some companies at mid to low size may still feel that we may come back into the previous sort of work environment of how the pharma was operating, which to our sense would be a grave mistake. I'll pause here and hope that sort of clarifies specific question that you've asked.
Yeah, and Jasdeep, how catastrophic are the effects on suppliers and the further? So there's a lot of talk about China dependence for APIs, for example. How big has that been, right? Has it actually created significant risks for Indian producers and brands, or is that not as significant as it is made out to be?
No, it is certainly significant, Madhur. And our dependency on specifically key starting materials and intermediates on China is extremely high. And the proof is in the pudding. The government wouldn't have come up with such initiatives of providing SOPs to set up now in the API space, what we should have done about 5 to 7 or 10 years, or maybe many years ago. And Manish would be the best person to sort of comment on that. So there is a certainly high dependency. Did some of the Indian companies manage that dependency well? Certainly. I think some of us really picked up that there is an issue with this, and therefore a higher set of I would say invoices and requests from some of these companies were put. The other thing you have to understand is we do maintain a certain sense of inventory, and the issue in China and rest of the world, if you see from a COVID perspective, is also very sequential. So while we started facing a lot of these things, China started coming back to its normalcy to an extent, right? Of course, nothing is normal, right? But had this happened almost in parallel, if it had played out in China and India, then it would have been catastrophic to a different level.
Got it.
But I think overall, I would say it's been well managed. But there is nervousness, Madhur, and nervousness is because every day is a new challenge. You suddenly come to know this intermediate is not available, and suddenly you are sort of trying to figure out how to react to that. So each organization has to be very nimble right now, and there are price increases happening, right? So you have to manage that as well. There are freight increases happening. You have to manage that as well. And at the same time, some of the drugs that these APIs and intermediates go in are essential drugs. So you can't take price increases in this. So this starts impacting your margins. So, you have to, as a business leader, manage many dynamics to make sure that you are surviving in this volatile period.
Got it. Very, very interesting. Sudeep, what's your view? From a From biological world, which of course is a lot of talk in your area, not necessarily about Biocon. How has your side of the world changed?
Madhur, good evening. First of all, thank you for having me. This esteemed
Welcome.
panel here. I think I was just to add to this. I think we being in essentials, one thing which we need to acknowledge is, we were caught off guard in that sense. But the way the industry has turned around, every aspect of it is something which we should be very proud of. Meaning, there was no extreme shortage of any of the drugs, although the supply chain was completely shut down. Initial 1 week there was panic, and that panic really got to us. And like Jasdeep said, we learned a lot of things on the being nimble foot. People who were not knowing about distribution got into a chain and managing supplies. I think there were a lot of learnings because we were totally off guard, meaning you can call us that we are pants down kind of a thing. So that was essential. Now, if you ask me about biologics, it's as complicated as is it because it has a lead time from developing the drug substance to getting the formulation out. So any stoppage in the production line, it affects significantly because you get delayed by quarters, or you sometimes end up with a significant supply chain breakdown. So this having said that, biologics and being in that space, I can tell you, Indian pharma being the pharmacy of the world, India has affected. Yeah, definitely. Short term, it will be. But I think getting off the airlines not being there and getting the products out to the world also was a challenge. And from that angle, that loss is huge in terms of a lot of revenue, a lot of patients could not get the product. And that we see as a biologics firm also, we see that there is hindrance to movement of products going outside India. But then what I acknowledge is the Indian companies, how they have ensured that India is safeguarded. Like Jasdeep was talking API. API is a big issue. China dependency is definitely there. Already we are seeing increase in prices. There is shortage of API. And impact, as you said, chronic we didn't see because there was panic buying. Acute, we are not sure what is going to happen. There is definitely an effect there. Hospitals are going to be significantly impacted. The initial part, and now I think we are going to face further challenges, is in the logistics. The reverse migration is going to hit the industry. Having said that, the productions we may be able to get the machinery working, but the migrating labors, and because it is a skilled labor, whatever said and done, there is even a packaging line goes offline or people are not there, you get into issues. We have seen all of that in the last few weeks. Product is ready, you can get the operators there, but you can't get the packaging. So there are multiple facets to this COVID impact and learning. So it is not over yet, but it is something in the few weeks we see is the industry can play multiple roles. And what my learning is, I've seen people doing multiple. Hello, yeah. I've seen people doing multiple roles, getting from production, distribution, marketing, virtual engagement, which was a must-have or a need-have kind of a thing. Some of them which are okay, good to do kind of things also became priority. So, for example, managing inventory was not something which was considered, or the last mile inventory was not very significantly looked from the top. But if you look at it, when we were caught on inventory and no movement, every tablet or every strip became very important, and we wanted to know where is the inventory. So the reverse Jasdeep said one thing about MSMEs. This is one thing which will hit the industry. There will be, because the MSME is small, big players will manage for some time. The cash flows, equity, they have reserves, they have built-in capacities, they may be able to manage. The MSMEs will have problems. Their cash flows will be significantly impacted. The labor force not being there. So we will see an impact in the sense there can be consolidation at the top brands, but down the line you will see some capacities being curtailed. So on that front, I think we have every biologics being difficult and limited capacity across the country will have its implications. Complex molecules take time, but I think we didn't have a significant breakdown. But every company has had breakdown globally. So we will see shortages for a week, 2 weeks, somewhere in between. When and how, at present, we cannot predict.
No, it's very, very interesting. Jasdeep, moving back to you, is the impact on the industry different when it comes to, let's say, chronic drugs which have had very sustained demand in general, and people need to consume those drugs regularly, in those conditions. But acute, which is also some of impulse, and then also one positive side effect of COVID is people not leaving homes and hence not feeling as ill, and so some of the regular prescription drugs, possibly having a problem. But nutraceuticals, on the other hand, with people fretting about immunity, and suddenly turmeric-based nutraceutical pills, being in fashion, and Giloy suddenly being an important thing that people need to buy. How has that sort of the product marketing side of the things changed? And does that create a sort of a discontinuity that some drugs you need a lot more, but then some others, those lines are not necessarily fungible, and so there you actually face the same distress as some of the other industries, like an apparel retailer is facing, for example, right? Which is the shortage of demand.
Yeah. So Madhur, spot on. I think what has happened because of COVID is because the hospitals started disproportionately focusing on only the COVID patients. The whole OPD and even the IPD on some of the electable surgeries and some of the electable procedures has come to a halt, right? So if you really look at it, where the slowdown has been is primarily in the drugs where there has been shortage, where there has been usage in the IPD. That is one. The second is, we usually say that acute has got impacted. You see, you have to break acute into 2 or 3 ways, right? One acute is, which is, I would say, discretionary, right? The ones that you were talking a little bit on. Nutraceutical is one spectrum of it, but there are some dermatological products, which are discretionarily used. Then there is a category in acute which is second line and third line. You don't use them when you get the first symptoms of an event, of a disease, right? So if you really break this again, the whole acute category, the first line doesn't get impacted that much, or the first line of treatment. So your first line anti-infectives, which sometimes, or the first line pain relievers or first line gastro products, these are not getting impacted because me and you and most patients are used to approaching a chemist and getting these off the chemist, right? And you don't need sometimes a prescription from the physician. So I think that is kept the first line, I would say, acute therapies protected to a great extent. But there has been no doubt. You look at again data, and data is the best way to analyze some of these things. Chronic has been well protected, and we actually saw a little bit surge in March, because as soon as the lockdown was announced, you didn't know how long will this last, and therefore people started keeping a stock, much like demonetization, right? So there were some parallels that we saw, from a chronic, I would say keeping a little bit of buffer, if I may say. But certainly acute. Nutra is an interesting one. I think, you see, again here you have to divide products into brands where there was a share of mind already, which companies or the patients thought had a direct correlation to immunity. They actually saw some bit of uptake, whereas some which were just fledgling, and if you look at overall group, you wouldn't find that there would be a large uptake, because at the end of the day, it's again a discretionary spend, and people avoid discretionary spends in such period of time. So that's the way it has been. I think companies have also been very smart, right? They've also known that, how do we make sure that some of these products which companies will take up are rightfully where there's a rightful engagement with the chemist or limited engagement with the physicians.
Very interesting. And Manish, coming to you support a lot of global brands and global products with their R&D pipelines, with their go-to markets in India, right, and so on. How is that shaping up? Is that activity increasing, or has that activity come to a halt? Because this crisis could go both ways, right? It could dissuade people and companies from innovating, and to others it might be very good.
So, Madhur, so it's very, we've had only, let's say, 8 to 10 weeks only now, and we're not able to see any trends as far as R&D is concerned. But what is most likely going to happen is that R&D is one of the first areas where companies start to prune their costs. Unfortunately, it's very easy to do that, and certainly that will happen. Cost cutting, all companies have to do. We've already discussed that. Sudhir also mentioned, Jasdeep mentioned that small to mid-sized companies have, I think, significant problems in terms of working capital, because the planning cycles are long. And just to add one more point to that, the payment terms most of these companies are getting from China were on credit. At least the small to mid-sized companies are no longer able to enjoy that credit from China. Lead times being so long, if you are getting 90 days credit and suddenly and your sales was, let's say, 100 crore a month, you need to bring that much money more as working capital. So large companies can withstand all that. Small companies will have a difficult time. But to the point of R&D, so R&D is one of the first areas where companies will start to cut their costs. But what I have seen in my experience, is that that's not always the best sort of option to sort of exercise, though it's the easiest one. It's also a time when you can reprioritize your projects. You can defer some major expense of let's say bio study, etc., to maybe next financial year, and look at R&D productivity. So while large companies have very elaborate systems of measuring regularly on a monthly basis R&D productivity, outcomes, and all that, small to mid-sized companies, relatively speaking, do not spend that much time. So there is an opportunity actually to not really scale on the activity and focus more on productivity.
Got it. And Sudhir, do you concur with Manish here? Because biologicals and Biocon specifically, the strength is R&D. But do you think even for companies like yours, there is there are decisions or reconsiderations on R&D spends and drug development, or no?
I can't speak for R&D Biocon, but I can definitely tell you for Biocon, like companies, R&D is pivotal. Meaning for us, you cannot live without R&D. So R&D has to go, because the planning cycles or the lab cycles for each one of them, from a scale-up batch or a different strain, if you want to get the sourcing right, you cannot stop it. The R&D cannot stop, and it has to continue. Companies like Biocon will be, because they are R&D dependent in the sense.
Yes.
So that we have not shut down at all. Meaning R&D has been on. Like I said, productivity was the focus, ensuring that we keep the people safe, and we managed it well in that sense. So R&D, I think, like I said, there has been a shift. What we see is some of the molecules which were available with some companies have been put into COVID. At least the clinical development of R&D and clinical development has started working overtime. If you have seen, some of the molecules which were used for other indications have started getting into COVID. Vaccine which was in hibernation, or some which were on slow movement on some other vaccines, have started moving fast. So R&D activity by companies which are invested heavily in R&D and have expertise have moved in both diagnostics, treatment, and vaccine, all. So all of them are moving. R&D focused companies, they see an opportunity in this. So there is opportunity. So they would be working at less capacity, more productivity, but I think R&D would not have been affected much unless small companies where it is a small molecule which can wait for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, there has been some slowdown. But like is said, the capital is going to be an issue because Indian companies have been known to cut R&D spends when it comes to cost cutting first. So that can be an issue. That can be an issue.
Understood. So this is very interesting. And let me change gears a little bit. Let's just talk about sort of this marketing and distribution, right? So for the drugs that are there and, be it acute or be it chronic or whatever, but, with the distancing norms, with the mobility challenges, with, MRs not able to go so freely, with medical conferences not that easy to organize, like how is the sales and marketing side of the world changing, Jasdeep? Are there tweaks that you think pharma companies will make? Is that world also going to become a Zoom world, or it will resume in a couple of months?
So Madhur, I'm a data junkie. I've been reading a lot of reports from consulting firms where you worked before, and many other companies as well. And I think part of the data you'll publish today as well. And let me share some of that, right? Teleconsultation has seen a massive uptake, right? Every healthcare tech company, sustenance today is partly dependent upon a teleconsultation platform. E-pharmacies have seen a record high in terms of the orders being delivered, or at least orders being received on their platform. Right? So one thing is absolutely clear, that there will be a new normal, and that new normal will have a fair bit of digital intermediation to the physical interaction. Now, whether that was a medical rep to a physician or a physician to a patient, right? Both these engagements, and of course there are more engagements that are in person, but for the benefit of the group, these are the two which are most talked about in the pharmaceutical world. And I think in both of these you will see some bit of digital intervention coming. What will be the extent of it is a function of how long does this go on, and therefore how much does it percolate down from right now. This is a tool that is being leveraged by more sophisticated physicians, more sophisticated or well-to-do patients, right? How does this percolate into larger population and to a GPCP is a function of how long will this go on, right? The further the physician stays away from running his business, he will find tools and mechanisms to come back to business, right? Just like each of us are trying to do. So, and there will be tools. Some would be rudimentary and some would be more sophisticated, but there will be tools available for, facilitating the interaction between a physician and a patient. So what I'm trying to say here is that there will be a fair quota of now marketing spend on the digital front. Have companies figured out what that business model will look like? And have they figured out what will go into each of the conversations with physicians? I think it's a work in progress. I think some of the larger companies are a step ahead again, like I said, because they've had the bandwidth and they've had the time to also understand in maturity that there will be a new normal. So to that extent, I think I would say the biggest shift would be movement towards digital engagements with physicians and patients.
Understood. And Manish, from your perspective, like, have you seen some of your clients also sort of making alterations in their go-to-market approaches as to which cities, which kind of channels, what kind of rep engagement, what kind of events? Is there a difference in MNC versus Indian pharma companies? Just talk to us about, the different responses and reactions you are seeing from your vantage point.
So pretty much on the lines what Jasdeep just now explained. What we are able to see is the larger companies, more established companies, which have a full-fledged marketing, arms as well, not just the sales focus, are definitely much better equipped to manage this and adopt the digital marketing and try out different things, various things, and then see which one actually ultimately is more successful and also more acceptable to the doctor community. Because even the doctors are also, are very new to all this. And so there's a lot of feedback which is happening. There are some, I know at a very basic level, some companies started making calls or sending information on WhatsApp and all this, and we got a pushback. So companies are now finding more sophisticated ways of engaging with doctors. Doctors also, I think the time will see more need to engage, because in case it goes on for a longer period of time, it would be in everybody's interest to actually to do that, because over the last 8-9 weeks, the new prescriptions have almost sort of dried out on the chronic side also. So while you've seen some increase on the chronic side in the last 2 months and maybe this month as well, but for the next 3 to 6 months, not much investment has happened, or not much effective doctor calls have happened. And the entire system is new on both sides, on the company side, rep side, and also the doctors. Which efforts will lead to ultimately sales outcomes, or the outcomes that companies are seeking? I think that also one will have to see. There are so many new models available, a lot of activity happening in this space, but I think is still much more really has to happen. The challenge would be, for smaller cities and smaller towns, where the patients also would like to go and see doctor's face and would like to hear from the doctor. And so equally, the doctor may not be that tech savvy. So that we'll have to see what kind of products actually evolve over time for the smaller cities.
And Manish, do you see sort of e-pharmacies becoming even more important for pharma companies, or the channel mix is roughly going to be what it was?
So e-pharmacies are definitely have become really very important. Some new developments, some large investors now making investment and coming on board. Some of the policies getting clearer, and so e-pharmacies, I think, will over time definitely get a good market share in terms of servicing and distribution and all that. So that I think so we'll certainly have a new normal. So there is a significant opportunity in that space, and what I hear and talk to people on who are dealing with e-pharmacies or working for some, and there's definitely a lot of excitement within e-pharmacies at this time.
Got it. Okay. And question is, when you look at sort of the overall delivery of the drugs, supply chain perspective, especially some of the stuff that you guys do, there's also temperature controlled supply chains and warehousing and transportation, and then the ultimate last mile offtake at the pharmacy. Some of those pharmacists are not open. So the hospitals who used to consume a lot of your products are possibly closed. Nursing homes, especially, a lot of them are not open anymore. How is the distribution changing from your perspective? Are there any unique challenges that you see from a biological standpoint, or any other perspectives you have?
Yeah, cold chain products are a challenge. We face this problem then because airlines is one where we use the most for the cold chain, because you need to get it in distance places. Otherwise, there is a challenge. We don't follow the QA parameters, or we fail the quality control. So that we have had issues, and that is exactly where the chain broke down and the learning was. Even from warehouse to different states, because you could not cross interstates, and that caused a huge problem. So from manufacturing sites, you have your coming to your central warehouse, and central warehouse to depots, and depots to distributors. So we understood one thing is inventory for cold chain has to be maintained at a different level, and it has to be fragmented and dispersed. You cannot rely on last minute shifts. Like Indian domestic market, you find that we have a skewed sales towards the month end, and we are over years, we have found that we are okay with getting the goods in the last month end, and then that is how it has been. But that can be utterly dangerous in this kind of situation where product is available, but you are not able to reach. Flights are not there, and even moving cold chain trucks entire distances was not possible at this time. For example, we said, okay, no airlines, so get the cold chain trucks to move, but they cannot cross the border. So that is exactly where the shortages were created in some places, because cold chain.
Please go on.
Yeah, cold chain is an issue. So the learning is that you need to have, as vast as India is, and this thing, it's very difficult. We are still learning on how to go around it.
Right. And so is it fair to say that at least some of our pharma clients, we're hearing while the sales are down for whatever reasons, which does not necessarily mean demand is down, but sales are down, but the costs are up. And Jasdeep spoke about a lot of sort of renegotiations on freight and everything. With also even the warehouse space needed, you now need more distributed space. You need more space, in fact, right? In fact, safety stock requirements possibly are going up now. Stock is moving closer to the customer, right? So, do you think, is there truth to that this is going to be a somewhat of a permanent shift, or you think these cost increases and escalations are only temporary and are not fundamentally altering how you guys distribute?
No, it is evolutionary. Everything what COVID has taught us is about evolution. It's not change. We were lying low and saying, okay, we'll manage, and we were used to manage. We have not seen such kind of things. We were okay with the goods coming in the month end, invoicing and stock. We were not worried about shortages at the patient level. This evolution has taught us that you might have inventory at one place. It will affect the patient someday if this kind of things continues. Cost, yes. For us, I can definitely tell you, maintaining a cold chain and keeping inventory cost is going to be there. Is it going to be a shift in the way it's temporary? No, I don't think it is going to be temporary. It is going to be a next level. It's a new normal which we need to achieve. Because at present we are tackling with supplies coming on board and then distributing, and then you will be talking about maintaining inventories. So this is going to be a new normal. We are okay with 45 days inventory. We may not be happy with that. And that is what will happen.
Understood. No, I think so. As we is running over time also, and there are a few pages we'll run through because they conducted a survey across pharma companies. But just to close out last 5-7 minutes. We also have a couple of questions from the attendees. So one is a specific question from Perry Srinivas. How long will it take for India pharma industry to revive and show double-digit growth? Maybe we start with you, Jasdeep. What does your crystal ball say?
I would say, Madhur, anywhere around, I would say about 9 to 15 months. So on average, I would say about 12 months, but start as early as 9 months and as late as 15 is what I would think.
This year will be basically catch-up year. That's what you're saying. So
this is a catch-up year, yes.
Got it.
I think hospitals will function probably full throttle probably by fag end of this year, or let's say the last quarter of this year. And then I start seeing the double-digit growths that are representative of what the pharma grows at. So, yeah.
Manish, would you concur with that, or would you add a nuance to what Jasdeep said? Your crystal ball.
So my crystal ball says that this financial year that we've just started, is going to be very challenging. But also there are a lot of opportunities also, that companies can look at in fixing certain things and going in a more planned way. But it's going to be challenging on the demand side and on the supply side as well. So I think on the demand side also it will be muted. by this time, companies start preparing very aggressively for the monsoon time. This time around, they don't know. At least I've spoken to some of the large, very big contract manufacturers supply to large brands. So they still don't have a full handle on the forecast. The monsoons are expected on time, but so the acute clinic is going to be significantly impacted this year.
Got it.
So if by the time the hospitals are running like Jasdeep is saying, so I think next year we could perhaps see growth. Whether it will be double digit or not, I cannot say that. But certainly over this year, there should be growth for sure.
Got it. Sudhir, anything different that you would add?
Different, yeah, it's going to be challenging because forecasting nobody is able to do. It's not only for Indian market, for global markets also. Man, the shift is what is a must-have, need-have kind of a healthcare. Like for example, data like Justice said, we are waiting data. Why did all the ICU admissions which used to be full in hospitals, what happened? Suddenly people have become healthy. The number of heart attacks, admissions and have come down. What happened to so many procedures which used to happen? So we really don't know. Either people have turned healthy or was it not there? We don't know. So it's forecasting on that case. Where did all the heart attacks go? Meaning getting an ICU bed in a good hospital was a challenge. And there was no admissions. Yeah, one can be everybody shifted to COVID, or was there a collateral damage of deaths which went unnoticed? We don't know. So like Jasdeep was saying, the acute, high value, acute tertiary referral products which are high value, which has caused the biggest impact for acute care is the ICU admissions, the hospital admissions. These are high value products and high consumption products, So hospitals are going to take a hit, and that segment is going to take some time to recover.
Interesting. So one more question from the attendees. I think thanks. Anjan Bose is here, and as most of us know, he used to be the chairperson of Nat Health for 4 or 5 years. Used to be the CEO of Philips Healthcare before. Thanks, Anjanda, for joining. He said, what do you guys think about digital technology like AI, machine learning, augmented reality? Are some of these technologies going to become relevant and meaningful in a practical way when it comes to sales and distribution in pharma? Maybe, Manish, any thoughts on that? In particular, what does this do to technology adoption, if at all?
So planning, certainly, that's one of the points I made at the beginning. I think all companies, small and large, are going to have to do much better planning, more extensive demand planning at their side and supply planning, because the planning in small to mid-sized companies does not really exist in that manner. You just have orders, some buyers, big buyers who supply to them, and also alignment within the organization for within their company for demand and supply planning. So I think that is one. So to that extent, adoption of ERP, management of inventory, because inventory costs are going to go up at each point. The risk inventory on the supply side, wherever you foresee a problem, so that to manage that inventory very optimally for a large CMO or for a contract manufacturer manually won't be possible. So adoption of ERP systems, SAP-based systems, or any AI-based system would certainly be there. I mean, that's my view.
Got it. And anything, Jasdeep, from your side, anything around any technology usage apart from, of course, digital marketing tools and engagement tools from an MR and distribution perspective? Do you see any, for example, any virtual sort of demos or any other technology being used in the field?
So I first of all, I think Mr. Bose has asked a very pertinent question, and I do think that this augmented reality and data-based thinking from sharper segmentation of both physician and reaching out to patient will be part of the new normal. Now you have to think who will do it. Now if you are a fringe player in a particular therapy, it's almost impossible for you to invest in some of these technologies. What you will be doing, or where you will see this getting applied, is a lot around where innovators are playing. That's one place, because there are again very targeted patient segments and very targeted physicians. The other area where you will see this happening is where companies have disproportionate share of a particular therapy. Because now they will be using a lot of data to, create both awareness and also adherence, right? And today, both of these are big problems in our country. So, think of chronic diseases, think of market leaders, and you would see that some of those have to invest in some of these, very seemingly futuristic technology, but we will start seeing a lot of this getting applied in real over the next, I would say, maybe not 1 year, but certainly in span of 1+.
Fantastic. So I think what I will do is, we have 5 minutes left in the, at the webinar time, and maybe we'll extend a little bit, but what I'll do is at least go through some of the pages that we had from the survey we ran across across some of the senior pharma executives, and maybe that's sort of useful for the audience to cap up with. So a couple of things, I think we've spoken about this, thanks to the esteemed panel, demand will be muted. We're seeing, obviously on the acute drugs, on a lot of IPD related high value drugs that Sudhir spoke about. I think that's what the industry is saying. Chronic, you're right, chronic, we've seen an increase, because there the need is a lot more critical, for the patients there, and so there's some degree of hoarding and stocking up happening at homes, which now that the supply, at least on that side, has not been so impacted, I think will probably temper down. So that's absolutely right. I think another thing we're seeing is that, on the nutraceuticals also, we have seen a lot of food supplements, especially startups, have started to, reported increase in sales because immunity boosters and nutritional shots and stuff like that. But when it comes to pharma, the essential vitamins and supplements that boost immunity have sort of experienced an increase. But overall, in general, kids are not going to school, so not falling ill that often. People are not going out. Pollution is generally down. So we're seeing a somewhat of a dip, even when it comes to overall nutraceuticals. If you go to the next page, so one of the things that we also asked about, what has the change in the business environment been, right, as a result of COVID? And for the acute ailment drugs, you see the house is divided a little bit, right? So some, around 20 and 40% or said that it's unfavorable, right? 15 said about the same, and then around 35% saying that this has actually become mildly favorable. And it's interesting that on the acute side, the reasons why business declined, lower demand of drugs and just the non-reachability of MRs to doctors and pharmacy and hospitals is something that's been reported quite a bit, and especially acute, where which was very doc dependent, on prescription dependent. We're seeing the industry participants report a significant decline. Supply chain intermediation, etc., that are interruptions that you guys, the esteemed panel, talk about. Of course, people are talking about that quite a bit. And if you added the 41% on disruption between API suppliers and manufacturing plants, and the disruption between manufacturing plants and warehouse is actually a pretty significant. Actually, that's the single biggest trend, 41 plus 36%. On the nutritional side, just lower demand for drugs. So there's a lot more natural alternative nutrition that we're seeing some increase in, but the drugs per se are actually declining. So from a pharma perspective, that's a problem. And then I think on the institutional sales, just lower demand. And our research separately also shows that a lot of the smaller healthcare provider units are actually not on, right? A lot of nursing homes are not open. A lot of individual doctors, also different specialties, especially ones dependent on elective surgeries around eye, for example, or ENT. Some of those are just sort of fundamentally not there. And so that has led to a significant reduction in demand overall for the drugs. If you see the next page, so on the next page, so marketing, ingredient sourcing, I think we spoke about that. So R&D, one of the things that we've heard, at least from the industry participants, is that, there is some investment in which is going into certain kinds of resources and extension of certain kinds of product lines. There's of course a lot of talk about money and R&D dollars getting into ARVs and so on. But again, at an overall level, I'll probably concur with what Sudhir said, that there will be, while R&D is of course extremely critical and important, there will be a tendency to reduce, especially as the economic conditions or the financial conditions of some of the companies starts to become challenging. And the interesting fallout has been that warehousing has actually seen an uptick because of this crisis, and overall also across categories we're seeing the warehousing space is actually growing in demand, though warehousing rentals are being renegotiated down. So overall the market might still be flat or might grow only mildly, but there's definitely a reorchestration of the distribution chains and safety stock requirements, etc., at different points in the chain that is leading to an uptick. On marketing, the offline marketing channels are drastically affected. We're seeing a significant surge in e-pharmacies and also significant surge in how online channels and online media is being used to reach out to different stakeholders, be it chemists, be it patients, be it doctors. And then one of the interesting things, which is not a part of this discussion, but how do specialty doctors and specialists sort of create or interact with their own feeder networks, right, in local geographies, is very interesting, because now from the CMEs and medical conferences, they have to also move to digital engagement and digital interaction with cultivating their feeder networks and being in touch with collaborating on different therapies. So moving to the next page, another thing that I think we've been we've seen market is that the market is reporting a significant issue with sort of making physical visits or launching new products, because if you can't get BTL promotional material, if you can't get samples, if you can't reach out to the doctor and make your drug or the formulation a part of the new prescriptions, becomes really tough to launch a new product. So there is definitely sales teams, there's a lot of pain being felt around sales teams unable to make physical visits, launch of new products being an issue, small physical RTMs or large conferences not happening. I think so there is a fair bit of marketing spend issue that the pharma companies are facing. From a supply chain, perspective, actually we spoke about this, so I will actually skip this in interest of time. One of the things that the pharma companies are doing is wait a second. Pharma companies are preferring to use webinars, sort of connecting key opinion leaders and field force follow-ups via WhatsApp, email, etc. So we are seeing some pharma companies sort of adopting the digital tools a little more proactively, especially mid-sized pharma companies, where the sales have been quite deeply impacted versus the larger ones. Field force follow-ups have become much more digital platforms for communication between docs and field force become more important. Telemedicine, EMR type tools now starting to become a lot more important. Then finally, this is the last page. Overall, I think one of the questions we asked was in comparison to FY 19-20 over the next 2 years, how do you expect healthcare marketing spends to change? And most of the pharma companies feel that the digital marketing and the online doctor RTMs will be the winner, right? A lot of digital assets for field forces, apps, iPads, digital marketing materials, etc., will become very important. While the physical RTMs, the physical marketing samples, the spends on increasing field force, those spends will actually come down, and some of them will fall much more beyond the 20%. Literally everybody we spoke about on what is their expected sort of percentage share of digital marketing out of the overall marketing budget in the next 6 to 12 months, and literally everybody has said that they will increase spends, and the expected share of digital marketing within overall marketing could even go as high as 30%. So in fact 39 plus 17%, which is sort of 56% of the companies are actually 56% of the companies feel that the spends will go up beyond 15% of the total spend. So, that's where I think we like to close the webinar. Just one last question I think I'm seeing on the screen. Is there, if the May-June sales remain sluggish, do you see pharma companies coming under stress from we're hearing a lot of layoffs from startups and so on. Do you see things to go that bad for pharma companies? Maybe Manish, any sort of final comments on that? It seems like an interesting question to be asked in the pharma world.
I have, what I can say is most companies have put freeze on their hiring. So I don't know. I pass it on to Jasdeep to further elaborate on this.
Hey, Jasdeep.
Madhur, I don't know if May, June, but yeah, May, June, July. If this extends and we see negative growths in all those 3 months on an aggregate basis, I think what pharma companies are actively thinking is to reskill some of their employees in field, and there is a lot of investment happening in training right now, and to be ready more for the digital world. And there is a consequence on workforce, right? Let's be very transparent and honest about it. Now, one part that will help is no hiring over the next 3 months. Some part of it will be internal absorption. I think that the impact will be more, Madhur, maybe more again in the mid to small size. Some of these companies have low productivity, also will get impacted more in terms of growth. But again, 2% in a large company versus a 10% in a smaller company sometimes come to the same numbers. So, I hope that with lockdown opening, that there is no negative growth, because the previous question was on when do we come back to our double-digit growths. But if we see no negative growth, I think there is appreciation in the industry that to the extent protect your people. And but if the situation remains subdued like what we saw in April, and this continues for another 2 to 3 months, I would think that there would be some conflict.